Gregor, if I can get you to just unshare your screen for a mo, and I'll just
Absolutely.
launch us into the next and final portion of our time together today. Has everybody had a good time? You learned a bunch of stuff? I'm guessing, yeah, there's a lot of thumbs up around the board. That's awesome. I'm just checking that you can all see my screen. So this is this morning. My goodness, we've had 3 hours together already. This was the beginning. I've thrown it into session 5 right at the top, so you can see your beautiful faces. You can share that on Instagram or social media if you like, just to say, hey, I actually went to the Gnowbe Conference this morning, learned a whole bunch of stuff. Maybe throw in a tagline about something that was one of your key takeaways. Before we can launch into a little bit of networking and kind of like cross-pollinating, if you will, in terms of collaboration. I mean, Gregor is still here, so if you have any kind of more follow-up questions, maybe specific to your organization in AI, or on the subject of microlearning, because I know Brian is still here, and I can also lend some insight into the world of microlearning. I would love to just, for those of us who weren't here yesterday, just quickly alert you to the new feature that I alluded to right at the beginning of the day. So session 5 in action 1, talking about a custom landing pages, and Gregor, the man of the hour, is right here representing his whole team that has put this together. Now, you'll be familiar with this page because you would have seen it when you jumped straight onto Gnowbe if you're a first time, or if you're an existing client, you'll go, oh my gosh, this is exciting. I have never seen this before. I wanted to show what it looks like on the front end, but then I want to take you to the back end so you can see just a tiny taste of how you could leverage this for your organization or group or company. So you can see here, we've actually got, you've got the ability to be able to put in your own logo, not just have the Gnowbe centric one. You've got the ability to add your own banner, and this is at the group level and will be at the workspace level as well. So just want to let you know about that. You can see here the agents who are part of that program, so it's an easy way to be able to reach out to them. You can see the members of the group and how many are in there, which creates a sense of collaboration and unity already, particularly in a global workforce that's remote. You can see the programs that are just attached to that particular group, which is really fun because it just cleans it up and makes it look really nice, and I know exactly in what order I'm supposed to complete things. And obviously I can jump into each of these. You've got announcements, and I'm going to show you on the back end what that kind of looks like. So Megan's jumped in here and popped a couple. And you've got a group wall. So some of the things that you've already shared today, and if you were on yesterday's as well, you can see them pop up here. A first iteration of a group wall, so that you just a sense of collaboration and togetherness. You're not actually going through static content by yourself in a one-way kind of fashion. So I'm pretty sure most of you, particularly if you're an existing part of our community, on the back end, you want to know what that little guy actually looks like. So this is an example of a workspace on the back end. You can kind of just see it at a higher level here. Some of the key metrics. If we were super geeky, we could see answers and completion rates and all those beautiful things. And a prize will be nominated based on completion rates. So hold that thought. A group landing page is what we had here. So this link took me to that landing page. So it's a nice, easy way of being able to share that with people. You can upload your own logo here. Here's your cover image that we were talking about. You can put your own kind of branding on it in a sense, or white labeling in a sense, with your own colors. There'll be different templates available. So you've seen the first iteration on the landing page today, but there'll be 3 or 4 other iterations of that in coming weeks. Announcements popped up here, really, really nice and easy to send notifications. So it pings the same way as a push notification to a phone and shows up on the landing page. And then, of course, programs in there. So I just wanted to show you a tiny taste of that. If you've got any questions about the custom landing pages, feel free to reach out to the team with any follow-up info, with any other follow-up questions that you have. If we jump over to the next action here are the giveaways that I was talking about. So again, I can see on the back end, we can see on the back end, who's the person, who is the participant who posted the most comments to the group board today. Now, remember, this is still live and living. So technically in the next 24 hours, you could go ahead and make sure that you complete all of those posts. And make sure that you're the first one to get a free consultation session. What does that mean? That means if you have content and you're like, hey, I actually would love to learn some best practices about how to make this engaging, effective, orderly, and a nice flow. One of our team yesterday talked about just making it bite-sized, keeping it moving, making sure that we get the results that we're looking for. That's a great opportunity there. It's valued at $400, but you'll get it for free an hour. And then we have a microlearning instructional design certificate level 1, which is really, really great. We get so much positive feedback about this from people who are like, I actually really want to dive into microlearning instructional design, the art of it, the skill of it, and I don't know how. This is a way to be able to not only learn it in a static format, but actually learn by doing as well. So that is also up for grabs for the person who completes all of the actions in day 1 and day 2 first. So have a look at that. And you can also see we've got 24% off of all of our plans for the next 24 days, and you've got the code here. I also did just want to mention right at the end in here, the very, very last session, session 6, you can grab yourself a certificate. And that just is a really, really awesome way of saying, hey, I showed up to a conference, I learned a whole bunch of things. You can put that on your LinkedIn profile. And it's a great way to just show that you're continually developing and strengthening your own skill set. So I did just want to make mention of that there. We're always looking for feedback to know, what did you learn? What were your key takeaways? Recommendations maybe for next year's conference. And that's great for us because we care about transformation. It's not enough for us to have a passive audience that goes away and we don't actually know if you learned anything new or not. So get that feedback in there and that will help us a lot. But diving back to connection points, final point to mention before I stop sharing my screen is in a normal online, in-person conference, you would have the opportunity to share business cards around and connect and collaborate. We have an online alternative, and it is this. If you want to copy and paste your LinkedIn profile and keep collaborating and networking with the people that have been on today's call and yesterday's call as well, go ahead, copy and paste that in here, share it to the group, and then you guys can connect away. I know I've had a lot of invites in the last 24 hours from some of you already. So it's so great to be able to connect and just get to know each other better. What's your organization doing? Where are the pain points? Where are the successes? Because we're all learning together, as Gregor very beautifully pointed out. And I'm sick of I've been hearing my own voice for a while, the Kiwi accent. I hope you are able to understand me. If you are able to put on your screens, but this next bit of time, this next 20 minutes, the final 20 minutes that we have is really for you guys. It's how did you find the conference? What key things did you learn? What were your takeaways? I'd love to open it up for a little bit of discussion. And this is a great way to ask, some of us some questions related to challenges and successes that you have as well. So feel free to unmute yourself. And who has got the first kind of question or comment? What was your key takeaway? I think that would be a great place to start. Go for it, James.
Yeah, thank you so much for having this conference. I joined in today, so I wasn't able to make it yesterday. I'm up in Vancouver, North America, so I am on the Pacific time.
Is your accent slightly Australian? Am I picking that up right?
Yeah, slightly Australian, like very Australian, I think.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
I was born in Sydney and just moved 2.5 years ago to North America. So yeah, so I'm this part of the world.
You're 3 hours away from me, so kind of we're neighbors. Well, we used to be when I was in New Zealand. So great to see you.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, nice to meet you all. Yeah, I think there's so much going on in my mind at the moment. I think I'm coming from a place of both as a coach for professionals and leaders, all the way as a parent to a 13-year-old and a 9-year-old, and looking at how they're interacting with school. And my wife's also an elementary school educator. So I'm coming with different kind of mindsets and perspectives and as a learner. So I think maybe a question that kind of sticks out at the moment is this is looking into the future, but it's how there's often trends, but then there's things that stick. Mm-hmm. Something gets hot and there's buzzwords, innovation was a buzzword at a time and different things. And it's almost like you put lipstick on the pig and companies would just kind of do the innovation thing. And so I'm just kind of really curious on the AI side / microlearning of what's buzz, what feels like buzz and air, hot air, and what feels like core. And I'm interested in the core, sticking to the core and the fundamentals for the future, both as a parent, as a coach, as a leader. Yeah,
such a great question. Brian, feel free to jump in on this on the micro-learning kind of aspect of this, and Gregor to the AI. And I also know I could jump in as well, but perhaps Gregor, we could start with you.
Yeah, well, I think AI has I think you need to look at the different applications you are having. So every AI will not be necessarily equally effective in every application you include it into. I think it's really important how is the flow of an application. So for instance, Gnowbe has a certain flow with sessions and actions, these kind of things. And if you happen to implement AI, I think it needs to fit to that concept you're having and or make it fit in a sense. I see, yeah, on the one hand, sort of the entire creation part of knowledge that could be done by a creator with a very specific need and sense, but it could be also eventually ad hoc creation of knowledge based on knowledge gaps you're having. So for instance, somehow we can assess your knowledge gaps and then maybe this was already a topic that you had been studying before and you don't really remember everything. But it's also not necessary to go through the entire material again, because again, you know a lot of it, but you just have the knowledge gap. So I think that's really key as well to make it more efficient and effective and don't repeat things that don't need to be repeated. And that's a really challenge for broadcast education, right? Because you have this kind of one ideal thing that should fit everyone, but like tailor making it to every single need. I think that's becoming possible with AI. And like I said, the entire engagement, you might have one version of how it looks like and then how it's being formulated. But if you have an AI bot next to it that can help you understand it, rephrase it, reframe it the way you need it, that can be really, really powerful and go along a lot longer way than just having the content itself.
Yeah, if I can speak to the education hat for a second, because elementary teaching actually was where I started off a million years ago back in New Zealand, all the way through higher education and now corporate world, L&D, fun life. It's interesting to see all the trends that have happened in teaching, and I still see this all over the pages. You know, they're constantly introducing new trends, new strategies, new tools every single year, and teachers have to constantly pivot so they never become a master at anything, but they're constantly having to adapt to the trends. When I think about microlearning, I don't really see it as a trend. I see it as a word that sits on top of best learning practices. So microlearning, we say bite-sized content, but it really is, I think we've got a better understanding, at least we're getting a better understanding that learners don't learn very effectively using long form content because the way we consume information is so different. Information is so readily available. We have to pivot. So I don't know if that helps, but I know for me, like when I was going through teacher training a million years ago, I didn't know the word micro learning, but that was how we were being trained to, you know, make sure you are tailoring to the needs of an audience. Kids' attention span is 5 minutes sometimes, but adults are kind of the same. You know, I think it's about 20 minutes, and you have to, I think in a conversation, I remember talking with my CEO, it's typically about 90 seconds that I talk and 90 seconds that you talk, and we're switching it up all the time. So in a conversation, we're back and forth, and that keeps it interesting. But what happens when you experience somebody talking monologue for half an hour at you? You zone out, right? It's the same thing with creating a learning experience. So it's not new. I think we're just getting more, hopefully, more effective in the way that we're kind of putting together content, and we just happen to call it micro learning because it fits what it is. So hopefully that helps. Brian, go for it.
Yeah, James, great question. Kind of give you some context. When I was running the MBA program, I ran a domestic and international program, and I was very curious when I took over the program, and I did some research on the core content of our MBA. 80% of our content of the MBA, which is really copied throughout the world, was developed before 1910. We taught the same classes the same way, and it was developed in 1910. Now, as Nicola said, there's new processes, right? Like, you know, some of the finance laws and, you know, those change. But the reality is we were teaching 1910. So it drove me insane. And so I love your question. And when I think of micro learning, if I'm going to address that aspect of it, I also agree it's not so much a fad of like, this is a new way to do math with sticks and stones, right? Something that we have to learn so we can forget really quick. It's really more of a concept. And I think why this trend is going to stay, if you want to call it a trend, or this way of teaching, it really is much more driven by the user. So it's much more user-centric, where back in the early 1900s, there was a real need. We were going through an industrial revolution, and management said, I have to have people that do this, train them now like this. And so they developed 60 Minutes, the MBA programs, that way of learning. And so I think this is driven. So you will see probably changes in the way micro learning is used. And that's the great thing about Gnowbe. I think they're set up with people like Gregor and the rest of the team that they're going to do those, but it's a much more subtle adapting to us. So what we want versus kind of the latest kind of hip trend, which also drives me insane. So great question. I think we could have a whole conference on that question.
I had thought about that too, right? Is that, you know, a lot of companies, they're going to look for the buzzwords, they're going to latch onto them, they're going to start trying to sell everybody on those particular topics. So I think part of one of our jobs as a consumer of that information and a buyer into these ideas is to really do kind of our own research, right? Of what the company is selling. So there's a lot of companies out there that are okay, we're going to do micro learning, but they're giving you just like super quick bites of information without any of the ability to look at the data on the back end, without other aspects that are key to your micro learning being successful. So not just being like, oh, this company is offering me micro learning and that's the hot thing, let me look at it. A lot of them are just isolated. So they're offering you one little bit of the overall puzzle of adult learning. So when you're looking at these tools, looking at and being able to process, okay, this is based on adult learning best practices. This micro learning is a key part of that. But what else needs to be done in order for them to be successful on their journey? Because you can offer little bits of information, they can check the box, go through the micro learning, but at the end of the day, what is that impact on their overall learning? And are you able to measure that with the tools that you have? Same with AI. You know, I use quite a bit of AI, just experimenting with different tools. And I've come across a few of them where I'm like, oh, this is a really cool idea. Let me try it. I try it and it's honestly, some of it's crap. And I have to be able to look at it and go, okay, this is not the right solution, but I know that there's other solutions out there that are better. And Gregor speaks to quite a bit like LLMs being, you have to teach AI. And a lot of people will put out an AI tool without having it properly trained. So if you're using a tool that's just giving you really basic, really generalized AI results, you're not going to get the same content and responses as if you're using one like ours that's trained on microlearning best practices. So it's on us as consumers to look at, okay, you're using a buzzword, but what is it that you're actually offering? Are you just offering that surface level buzzword, or is it all part of the bigger picture? So yeah, that's my thought process on it too.
It's like the deeper why, like gamification is a buzzword as well. And you see companies kind of getting one aspect of it, which I would call like the extrinsic factors, which is the coins, the badges, the points. But the reality is, like when I was doing my research, like intrinsic motivators were more powerful than just those kind of outward facing elements. It's not that they're not important, but it's one side of the coin, right? So it's understanding the deeper why and the human behavior and the way that we learn and consume, that, you know, it goes deeper than the buzzword of the trend.
Yeah. And can I just maybe ask or add a little comment thought as well, because I think this is just such an interesting conversation. I think about like social media as a way of like reels and a way of people consuming. So there's always going to be good and not so good stuff, like platforms, I think, depending on how they're used. But you know, I see that as like a way that people can learn micro learning in some fashion. But I can also see the flip side where there can be laziness and consumption. So it's almost like, because I got this, I know it, or I got this 1 minute reel or whatever. And so one of the things I'm kind of like wrestling with is somehow the beauty of the long form, or even places you don't want to be in and learning, is somehow there could be this side benefit that you learn patience, you learn compassion for the speaker, you learn all these things that is not just all about you and how it works for me, because that can be very consumptive and very self like centered. But we live in community and with trying to develop compassion as well. So anyway, it was just I'm not sure any thoughts on this, but there's always going to be, it feels like there's both sides of the 10-pin bowling, right? Like you go one gutter or you go the other side, there's another gutter. I just wonder anyone has thoughts on like the kind of like maybe shadow side of the benefits of potentially microlearning as well.
I think it comes down to who is your learner. It really comes back to knowing your audience again, you know, because if I'm somewhere like, I think it was, I was talking to a client in like South Africa or something, and their audience actually like, so we would say 10% of people respond to audio. So someone lecturing, somebody talking. But over there, it was actually the large majority respond to teaching and learning that way. So I'm going to change it, and it wouldn't necessarily be called microlearning, but I would say microlearning is like, how am I facilitating, how am I guiding them through from point A to point B? It's the deeper why, right? Versus someone over here who is that kind of TikTok culture, but I don't just want them to swipe through actions, because my deeper why is I want to see change. So that has to look like teaching them how to go deeper than just the swipe. So yeah, I think it's such a great conversation. We could talk about this for days.
When I was going to say too, that you're mentioning, you know, being able to look at and build the empathy and see the other sides. And I love, you know, the social aspect that we kind of present in our platform as well, of being able to, okay, we all learned from each other. So if we're going through a content, you know, together and an experience together, Gregor could talk about something and I could apply it, you know, in a way that I'm thinking that makes sense to me, share that. And then that might be something really enlightening, you know, for somebody else that's in the same training that they didn't even think to ask that question, right? So learning from each other and with each other. And I think, you know, in this day and age where we're such a disconnected culture and we're used to just seeing one thing, as you said, sometimes you don't see that there's a gap. Somebody can say something and we accept it and we're like, okay, cool, check. I know that. But having other people go through it with you and offering other perspectives or questioning, or, you know, being able to respond to the person who's curating with an additional challenge, then makes everybody grow, and is also making everybody responsible for the content that they put out, which I think is very important too, because a lot of times people put out content and then we receive it and go, okay, they must be an expert, or, you know, I learned that. But really nowadays, anybody can put anything out there, and it's our job to question and learn and challenge that. Yeah.
Awesome.
Such a great conversation, guys. Anyone else? What thoughts of the conference stirred up, maybe in your unique scenario? Marina, yeah.
I feel like I'm just taking it all in. I don't have a lot of contributions to add, but I'm really enjoying the conversation. I mean, my eyes have opened about AI. It's not a tool, but a strategy, and to just leverage all that it can offer, not as something to use, but something to take along on the journey. And I loved your question, James, and your thinking on the other side of the shadow side that you don't always think about. It makes you just wonder when you are creating content and which application you're using and which road you're taking for the microlearning. Are you thinking about the person that's actually going to do the training, and are you looking at the pitfalls also on that side? So very interesting. Thank you.
I'm curious to know what everybody's next step is. I'm sorry, teacher hat on, I can't help myself, but in the next, let's say 6 to 8 weeks, what's the one thing, maybe from day 1, day 2, both, if you were there for both, what's one thing that you're like, I'm actually going to go away, research this, or go away and try this, go away and, you know what I mean? I'm curious. I'll give you a couple of seconds because I have to think about it for myself too.
Easy for me, build awesome AI into Gnowbe.
Tick, good job, Gregor. But not just awesome AI for the sake of AI. I love what you said before when you were like, actually the collaborations with people who are using the technology actually makes the technology really powerful, because we know this level, but at the ground level for your particular use case, we don't know. So it's, again, going back to what James was saying, it's knowing your audience, right?
Absolutely.
Brian, what about you? You've been here for a couple of days. You were on the panel, you were speaking, and a learner. I'm curious, what's your kind of next step?
Oh, you know me, I have multiple next steps, but
That's why I
think,
said one, because I know you.
yeah, I think I'm still going to go back to what I said yesterday. I think it was the multiplication and
Yeah.
really thinking about having champions that I can scale out. So instead of just having a
Okay.
smaller group, but actually have champions that we're leveraging to scale out with a lot of these techniques. And I know that probably doesn't make sense to a lot of other people, but I got to tell you, I'm really excited inside because I've been processing it for 24 hours. So
yeah, it's something that I've got an e-course where I kind of piggyback off what Joy was speaking about yesterday, the spider versus the starfish. Was anybody here for that? So a spider organization, when you cut off the legs, and let's say the legs are those learners, they are completely reliant on the hub, so they actually can't function by themselves when you cut them off at the stem. Versus a starfish organization, if you cut the legs off, then they can still operate by themselves and sometimes grow into a complete starfish. And it's that sense of growth is looking like multiplication. So the most effective way of being able to train and equip is to train and equip my learners to that, so that they are set up to be able to teach on to somebody else, versus the information just dying with them executing on it, but them not being able to communicate it further down the line. Like, it's such a massive shift and so incredibly powerful. It's really good. We've got a couple of minutes left. Oh, James. Well, that was triggering a lot of thinking, wasn't it? I could see you turning that one over.
I mean, I'm probably similar to you, Brian, mate. Like, I've got so many thoughts. Like, I always have like multiple actions and like, but I'd probably land at this point on a word that Gregor used, which was orchestration. Like, just in, maybe it was even in some of the your talk. But I think that kind of like, maybe for me, it's a bit more of a posture of like, you know, I've had many stints in different parts of career of like being the player, so to speak, or the muso, or the like different instruments you play. But I think the orchestration kind of element, I think is helpful to kind of consider the different peoples in my life, both clients, family, communities, and just like understanding what are people playing and how can I help, like, just facilitate that rhythm, that melody, the harmony. They're all going to play differently. They might be switching instruments at a point in their life, and then maybe I get to play a part in whether it's directing, whether it's indirectly influencing, whether it's just having a conversation. Yeah, so maybe that's kind of like something I'm just kind of chewing on at the moment.
Yeah, I love that. And the teaching where we call it the sage on the stage versus the guide on the side, right? There's a big difference between. Take that one.
I like that.
Next time I'll charge you, but that's a
yeah. Thanks for the freebie.
You're so welcome. Team, that wraps up our time together. Thanks for staying until the end. It was sometimes the best and the richest learning experience is the conversations you have out the door from the conference. And this was essentially that. It's the rubbing up against each other's thinking. Oh, I actually had faulty thinking in this area. Thank you for correcting me on this. I get to evaluate, weigh up the pros and cons. So we definitely had a moment to do that together today. I was going to say, feel free to jump back into the program and just complete that last session for us, as it gives us really great feedback. And also just, I want to see what you're learning. If you want to reach out to us with any further questions and have a deep dive conversation about AI, I know Greg is going to have 1 million invites on his calendar in the next 2 days. But it was so wonderful to have you join us. We look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great, great day. Bye, team. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Talk to you soon.
Thanks so much. Bye.
Bye, guys. Bye.